New imperialism was a period of expansive and coordinated European imperialism conducted mostly in Africa and parts of Asia from the 1870s up until 1914. Most scholars agree that the main driving force for this new imperialism was economics, primarily concerning labor and raw materials to be used for export and manufacture. This period was brought about and dominated by newly emerging European empires which had previously been weak and relatively irrelevant in the global scheme. These new imperialists were nations such as Belgium, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States. The presence of these new powers spurred a need for rapid expansion of the pre-existing empires into previously uncolonized domains in order to maintain a foothold in global affairs.
The British Empire had held various colonies in Africa before new imperialism, from South Africa to Egypt. Following the Berlin Conference, Africa was partitioned and the British gained control of what was to be called British East Africa, nowadays Kenya, as well as territories north of South Africa, such as Rhodesia. In West Africa, the British gained control of Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and the Gold Coast, which is nowadays Ghana. The control of colonies like these were essential to the global trade routes held by the British, such as the route through the Gulf of Aden, the Cape of Good Hope, and later through the Suez Canal. Similarly, France had claimed a large portion of northern and West Africa, as well as Madagascar, in order to link their colonies in Indochina and the Pacific. The consolidation of these old powers was in response to the newer emerging powers. Germany had claimed a foothold in East Africa, Southwest Africa, and Cameroon, with smaller parts of West Africa. Italy had conquered much of modern-day Libya, as well as Eritrea and Somalia. New imperialism was not confined to Africa, however, as the Russian Empire was also expanding in the Far East. Russia had incorporated modern-day Mongolia and most of Manchuria into its sphere of influence, and had attempted to expand this sphere into northern Persia and Afghanistan. Similarly, new imperialism was not exclusive to European powers. After manifesting their destiny, the United States conquered Cuba and the Philippines from Spain in 1898. Japan also had imperialist goals. In 1876, they brought Korea into its sphere of influence, and later conquered Taiwan in 1895. They were also drawn to Manchuria for its natural resources, as well as to establish dominance over local rivals, including Russia, where they fought and won a war against in 1905, in order to lessen Russian presence in the region.
There were many driving factors of imperialism, from economic incentives to military and ideological differences between the colonizers and the colonized. Many sought to convert native populations to Christianity, while others sought to spread nationalism across their empire. Hobson argues that the main reason for new imperialism was mostly economic gain and the appropriation of resources to fuel production and export economies. Resources were essential to life in empire. Commodities and cuisine were both heavily linked with materials and ingredients procured from foreign land. The most prominent of these in the new imperialism were rubber, gold, gemstones, copper, and palm oil. Each of these played a large part in the everyday life of citizens in empire and were the driving force for the colonization of Africa and the East Indies. Spices from the East Indies were highly valued in metropolitan centers for their exotic appeal, and many attempts were made to cultivate sugar and tobacco in African land. The growth of empires in this period was also complemented by an increase of imported goods as well as domestically produced machinery and advancements in technology. The development of railroads and the telegraph were essential in the management of resources and coordination in these new colonies, which was a large incentive for entrepreneurs to make personal profits for new empires. Hobson believed that capitalism was intrinsically good and beneficial to everyone in the empire, and that the growth of these empires was a perversion of true capitalist ideals. By 1870, 200,000 kilometers of railway had been laid in total, and this had reached 1 million kilometers by 1914. Communities across colonies were increasingly linked, and the transfer of information and military troops became much easier, meaning colonies could be controlled from the metropole in much greater ease.
In Victor Keenan's book, European Empires from Conquest to Collapse, He places an emphasis on increasing military numbers when it comes to new imperialism. With an inevitable war coming up, countries wanted to gain an advantage over their enemies by gaining more troops from their colonised areas. This places an emphasis on gaining control overseas during this period. This was happening in most countries across Europe. With Britain having control in India, British military tactics were drummed into every second lieutenant in India. France was looking for colonial manpower to make up for the German lead, which led to Algerian warfare being undeniable benefits to the French army. This colonising for increased manpower can be seen by the fact that 1.3 million Indian soldiers were employed by the British for the war, showing that this was a great advantage to have these soldiers available as a result of this new imperialism. This was also true for Germany, who had the Weltpolitik, which was their policy for attempting to gain colonies and expand German power. This also shows German aggression which other countries had to respond to and catch up to. Niall Ferguson, in his book How Britain Made the Modern World, suggests that technology was the key reason for the new imperialism, with Britain being the leading example, as can be seen from the title of the book. In the days of sail, it had taken 4 to 6 weeks to cross the Atlantic. Steam reduced that to 2 weeks. However, by the time of the new imperialism, it took just 10 days to cross the Atlantic, meaning quicker trips, along with bigger ships which were allowed to hold more cargo, made it far more profitable and therefore appealing to countries again. This was also the case for the trip from Britain to Cape Town, which went from 42 to 19 days, showing everywhere in the world was more accessible. They were also safer to go to. Before, many British people stayed away from India and Africa, but due to scientific advancement, it was far safer to go, again making imperialism more appealing. There was also new technologies in colonised countries which increased the interest of imperialism. For example, Indian Railways created a huge market for British manufacturers, suggesting that the reason for the new imperialism was to create more profit due to enhanced technology. Linking both Ferguson and Kiernan's ideas together, this new technology and decreased travel times made it easier and quicker for soldiers from colonised countries to go to Europe to fight in the war, therefore making it a viable option to colonised countries for more manpower. This therefore made it easier to gain colonies and easier to gain colonial manpower to make up for the German lead.
In conclusion, there were many reasons for new imperialism to occur, including world trade, military prowess, and clout in international politics. Most historians do not agree on which reason was the most important, however all seem to agree that all goals were important whatever nation was colonizing.